There are some people who are already thinking about that, who are already in med school. And I'd love to introduce them to you now. I'd like to introduce you to Anam and Mary, who are two first-year Harvard medical students who realize that medicine is more than just medicine. It's now medicine plus politics plus economy. And I'd like to turn this over to them for their perspective.
Thanks so much, Haitham, for that introduction, and thank you to the entire DIP leadership for organizing this powerful day of action and for extending us this opportunity to represent the medical voice, the medical student voice, as we map this vision for our future. We're really honored to be included, and we wanted to take a moment to share how we're envisioning this mission to make change happen from our vantage point as physicians in training who are entering med school in the midst of a pandemic, or what we really should be calling the greatest failure of political leadership in our lifetimes. We actually wanted to start our remarks at where our journey in medicine started, which is the dreaded med school application process. As most of you likely know, the first thing we're asked in that winding application is, why do you want to be a physician? And the question we're asked most often as we transition to the interview process is, why do you want to be a physician? And as our peers will tell you, the process really just becomes an exercise in finding a million different creative ways of saying, I want to help people because I care. Because ultimately, I feel like, we all come from different backgrounds. We've had different life experiences. We have different dreams of exactly what we want to do in medicine. But what ties almost all of us together is that we're called to this profession because we want to help, because we want to serve. And when we donned our white coats for the first time, which we did in August, and as every medical student at every medical school dons those white coats, we take the sacred oath to serve our patients. And we do that joining every physician in every generation before ours who's also taken that sacred oath. But here's the thing, here's what we realized as we took that oath, as we reflected on what that oath meant. In today's world, where thousands of people have needlessly died because our political leaders have ignored science and have endlessly lied, where our fellow health workers are risking their life to save other lives, where the crushing health inequalities that our patients already struggle with are just being exacerbated and our patients of color are being made to suffer the most, we really can't honor that oath unless we enter the political arena. We literally can't serve our patients until we tackle what's ailing them the most, which is chronic and continued policy failures of our elected leadership. So to us, really the why behind why we became doctors or why we want to become doctors in the first place is exactly the why behind why we have to become politically engaged. I think earlier this morning, the question was brought up about whether it's ethical for physicians to be politically engaged. It's something that a lot of people ask us. To me and to us, in an unjust world, in an unjust system, in a broken country, it would be unethical not to be politically engaged. It would be a dereliction of duty for us as future physicians and current physicians to stay on the sidelines and say, well, this isn't our lane, we should just let the politicians figure it out, because that's worked out so well. And it would be a dereliction of duty to not use our unique strengths as physicians and future physicians to make a difference for our patients where it matters. And so as incoming medical students, we've been doing some reflecting on what are those unique strengths that would uniquely position us to create change. As we start our medical education, what are the things that we're learning that will actually empower us to be difference makers in the political sphere, that would separate us from all of the noise that is currently in the political discourse? And we've come up with a couple of things, 3 things. I'm sure there's more, but we have 3 that we're really galvanizing behind. One is that we're problem solvers, right? Doctors are trained to look at a problem, figure out the root cause, and treat it using data and evidence. So if we have a patient that's being forced to choose between buying medication and putting food on the table, or if someone who's supposed to be our patient can't walk through our doors because they don't have access to insurance, that's a symptom of a deeper problem. We know that because we're trained to look at the symptoms and then figure out the root cause. So we can see that the root cause of that is not medical. The root cause of that problem is structural and systemic. And structural and systemic problems require structural and systemic solutions. That's the lens that we would bring to policymaking. The second thing is we're communicators. Physicians are trained to be communicators. And I think this was mentioned also earlier today, that as a result, we should make pretty good campaigners, because one of the things that we are taught in our doctoring classes, every med school has a version of this. We've already started ours at HMS. We're taught, how do you talk to your patients? How do you ask the right questions? How do you clearly explain to them the right course of treatment? And what we're seeing from this pandemic is clear, calm, consistent communication from political leaders would literally have saved lives. So imagine having that kind of skill set at the center of our political discourse. And then last but not least is that we're patients first. Our ultimate loyalty is to our patients. So when we hear statistics like the Black maternal mortality rate being 2 to 3 times higher than the white maternal mortality rate, or life expectancy declining for the 3rd year in a row, suicide or alcohol-related deaths rising dramatically in the last 2 decades, or 27 million people uninsured still in this country, those aren't just statistics to us. Those are our patients. Those are people whose pain and suffering we've seen up close. And it's those stories that I think we need to take into the halls of Congress and state legislators, into the offices of governors and mayors. And if those stories are heard, those are the stories that can make a difference. And to me, it's those stories that ensure that we put patients and people above party, above any political agenda. To us, patients and their needs will be the ultimate compass that guides us in our decision making. And I think ultimately what those stories really underscore is that these problems just won't be solved by writing another prescription. We really need to start writing legislation, or at least influencing the people that do. And so I think that's the conclusion that a group of students at Harvard arrived at. And it's really that inescapable conclusion that led us to converge on this vision to launch a national organization focused on transforming medical schools into pipelines for the next generation of physicians who will be agents of change. Because ultimately, we know this is a generational project. This isn't going to be solved in one election cycle or by one candidate. We need legions of Al Grosses and Pritesh Gandhis and Abdul El-Sayeds, and we need to start looking at medical students as the future. And so to offer that overview of what this effort is starting to look like, I'm going to yield the floor to my accomplice in all of this, Mary. Go ahead, take it away.
Thank you, Anam, for spelling that out so beautifully. So I wanted to spend some time today just to walk through how we're planning to basically achieve these goals. So when I think about what we hope students and physicians will be able to do in the future, I kind of think about how they're going to be climbing this ladder of engagement and reaching a point where they can be politically engaged. So that can start with a belief of just believing in this cause in the first place, and working up to building up personal skills to engaging with others about these issues, and finally, even like running for office or engaging politically in their careers. So as we're starting here today, we already know from our peers, the peers you guys have all experienced during med school, some of them will already be ready, poised to be running for office, and they know that this is something that they want to do. But many of the students that we are interfacing with now, they're kind of at different rungs along this ladder. Some of them maybe understand this belief, but are still building this skill together. And then some students, actually the majority of students I would say they're not even looking at this ladder yet. They don't even see this as something that they want to integrate into their future in their careers. So we really envision our work to fall under 3 main steps or categories to get to our goal. The first is to look at the students who are not even considering yet political engagement in their future. And we want to build a campaign that will shift medical school culture to recognize political advocacy as a professional responsibility. And to achieve this, it's really about raising awareness. And we need to have creative and captivating, but very intentional kind of campaigns. So we're thinking of doing that through mediums such as social media, infographics, podcasts. And in the next step, as we begin to capture the medical students' attention, we want to really ensure that they feel empowered with tangible skills to influence the political and policy discourse. So the type of work we're asking students to be engaged in now and also in their future, it's work that requires skills that we're not taught in our medical education. It's not in our curriculum. It's not in our clinical training. And for so many times, we'll be in classes asking, like, what can we do? And honestly, our faculty don't have good answers for that. And we can't expect them to be engaged in this work throughout their medical training without giving them tools to succeed. So one of our main focuses as well will be to look to develop programming that touches on not only policy and political literacy to kind of build this foundation, but also skills such as writing, advocacy, and campaigning that will really elevate them to positions where they maybe in the future can run for office. And the last student is really to position students for impact. So as they approach the top rung of the ladder and they're ready for engagement, the question really becomes, how can we connect medical students to pathways for them to reach that goal and for them to stay politically active? So today we've met physicians who have run for office, and we want to make sure that our peers see themselves and the doctors like the ones we've met today, and they can see that there's a path to get to that point in the future. And we want to be able to achieve this through direct mentorship and connections that we can make with physician policymakers, physicians who are in office, and advocates. Our goal is to build a national network so that when students join us, they're tapping into a network across the entire US, and they can find mentorship and peers who can kind of support them and help them reach this goal in the future. So just to give you an idea of where we are now, so currently we're in the process of building a national board, so who will mentor the chapters across the country, and we're currently in recruitment of chapter leaders at different medical school campuses. We know there's a lot of commitment from the folks here. There's physicians, students, trainees, and we would really love to hear from you and learn from your expertise. And if you're a student or if you're a trainee, and being able to have you join our team if that's something you're interested in. So please reach out to us. We're going to drop our email in the chat here today, so that you may send us an email, please, for anything. And we would love to be able to learn from you. And thank you so much for taking time to be here today and kind of seeing where we're at right now.
Yeah, we are so thankful.
We're also happy.
Go ahead, Anam.
No, I was just going to say we're happy to take any questions that people may have as well.
Yeah, I was just about to open it up for a few questions for you guys. Anam and Mary have really, they just impressed us so much. They came to us and said, no, we want to do something now. And they have really been a huge driving force of making things happen for future doctors in politics. Are there any questions that you may have for Anam or for Mary? And if not, we will move on to the next part. Go ahead.
Hi, hey, it's Bruno. Wonderful job, Anam and Mary. This is great. Just so excited to hear about how structured and thoughtful you're being about this approach. And I completely agree. This is exactly the kind of thing that we need right now in our medical school. It's something that I did not get very much in medical school. I had to kind of forge my own path, but would love to get back. And so I'll be sending you an email, and hopefully we can connect that way. I was hoping to get your sense for, you know, some different tactics that, you know, could be taken at medical schools, whether, you know, you have a network of physicians that's willing to give talks, or come on campus eventually and give talks in person. But there's also, you know, the possibility of having a small group or even individual consult sessions with, you know, advocates to help train medical students to find their passions, find ways to get involved and bring those passions to light. So I'm happy to talk more about this with you, and I'm very excited about the opportunities that you're discussing today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for saying that. We're excited to connect and discuss further, but all of the above, absolutely. We've talked about the real power, as Mary was mentioning, of seeing ourselves represented in politics. And so having physicians who have run for office, who have actually won elected office, come back to give talks to med students, I think it really allows medical students to expand their horizon of what their career trajectories could look like and begin to start thinking about, what do I need to do now to position myself for that kind of future? You know, constantly in the process in medical school of thinking about residency applications, fellowship applications, right? What are the steps we're taking to build towards this future? And so being able to intervene early and get on the radars of med students and say, this is an option, and this is actually a really compelling way for you to fulfill the reason why you're here in the first place. And then I think, as you said, being able to build those personal connections to deepen that conversation where actual physician politicians and policymakers can mentor students and begin to guide them in that journey can be really powerful. So absolutely looking forward to talking more about that.
Yeah, and I always tell students and residents that advocacy is burnout prevention. I mean, of all the things that, you know, are beyond your control, that you can't control in the exam room or doing charting and all the stuff, all the systemic flaws, this is your way to help fight against that and feel like you're making a difference. So yeah, right on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for all your hard work and really pushing this early. And this is something I think all of us wish we had early on in our medical training and careers. And really, you're making it happen.